Welcome to the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Tyler Childers and his record, Snipe Hunter. He released that on July 25th. This is the 7th studio album for the country music artist and his follow-up to 2023's Rustin' in the Rain, which is a record that has a pretty cool concept at its core. It's 7 tracks with just a 28-minute runtime that were created as though Tyler was pitching them to Elvis Presley. It's a pretty nifty homage to the king of rock and roll. And once again, he is taking a unique approach to the creative process with Snipe Hunter, but I might argue that concept isn't quite as important on this record as it has been on past projects. I think this new record is kind of just about having fun and allowing each creative moment to unfold organically. Unfortunately, not every moment comes off this way, and it's made this one kind of tough for me to process. Snipe Hunter features almost twice as many songs and doubles the runtime of Rustin' in the Rain while building off of the energy of that album's opening title track. Tyler explores different pockets of rock and roll on this new record, particularly Southern rock and blues, and he does so in experimental and sometimes even psychedelic fashion, giving the album an adventurous energy while I think also keeping it firmly grounded in the stylings of Appalachia country and bluegrass. This dynamic, I think, will keep the listener on the edge of their seat, guessing with each new track, but I think it also results in a record that has decent continuity and an air of familiarity that will open the door for longtime fans, at least most of them anyway, to at least appreciate what he's doing. And I think that this evolution of his sound is something that makes sense, especially when one considers his second and breakthrough record, Purgatory, and its follow-up, Country Squire. Both of those records, as many of you probably know, were produced by Sturgill Simpson, as well as David Ferguson. And I think given the boundaries that Simpson has pushed with his music in the last decade, it just kind of seems like a natural progression for a singular artist like Tyler Childers to take interest in so many musical forms outside of where he began. And I'm not going to argue that his sole influence is Sturgill Simpson. That's not what I'm trying to say, or that he's trying to follow in his footsteps. I think that both artists and guys like Eric Church with Evangeline versus the Machine this year, Jason Isbell with the 400 unit and their record Weather Vanes. These are records and artists that are demonstrating that country music can be rooted in the traditional sounds of the genre while also utilizing the countless musical traditions pioneered in this country. If you're talking to Tyler, though, just don't call it Americana. And I find it ironic. I think that, it's a pejorative term to him, but I feel like it's a term that is a way for most people, including myself, to label the various influences that run through a lot of his music and especially the songs on this record. But I find it fascinating that Tyler chooses to put himself in that country box. And I think he does it as a way to show people that classic country can be something bigger. Rock has evolved, hip hop has evolved, pop music, jazz, and so on. So why can't country? I think it's an interesting angle. The question is, does Snipe Hunter succeed in opening the minds of those classic country fans to something that is progressive and different? I think another very interesting aspect of the record is the choice to recruit an outside producer after Tyler has assumed that role on his last 3 records. And before I listened to this thing, I found it even more interesting that he selected Rick Rubin. The man is legendary, as we all know. So part of me thinks, why not get a guy like him who has built a reputation on his expertise with arrangements and bringing out the best in artists? I think that his classic hands-off approach is something that suits a guy like Tyler. I don't know him that well, but he strikes me as the type that would work without a lot of micromanaging. But we all know that there have been some missteps with Rick and the vast array of artists that he's worked with in the past, and not everyone has enjoyed working with the guy. Just ask Black Sabbath. Rest in peace, Ozzy. But I do applaud Tyler for pursuing experimentation and for bringing Rick in on this record. But I think either one of them should have just taken the time on a lot of moments to rein this thing in. There are a lot of great moments, especially fan favorites like Onita and Nose on the Grindstone, but I I question whether Rick was the right guy to give those tracks studio treatment. And I also think that despite being original material, those songs have been out there for fans for a while now, and they're not exactly bringing fresh energy to this record. I think songs Getting to the Bottom and Watch Out are highlights for me, showcasing the strength of his voice and channeling some great storytelling. Although I hate all the vocal modifications that are on this record. And then there's also tracks like Bitin' List and Down Under that arguably provide too much playful contrast and I think are only memorable for being so tongue in cheek. I think that overall, the food stamps sound great, backing him up on this record as they always do. But there are many moments, especially with opener Eatin' Big Time, where the mix just sounds too cluttered and murky, and you really don't get to enjoy the excellence of all that instrumentation the way that it should be. I really love the idea of what he's trying to do on this record, but I feel like there are just too many moments where it comes up short. And with a bloated runtime, it really just kind of exacerbates that. This album, it opens up with Eatin' Big Time. It's a track that's going to kick off with a little count on the drumsticks and vocals, ushering in a song that is kind of this light but smoldering outlaw blues feel with a bit of country to boot. There's also a little psychedelic guitar that stands out on this one as well. The verse starts with just vocals and the rhythm section. And then you get a little lead guitar that works in, and it continues to shift between this kind of like sinewy steel riff and then staccato rhythm. I like the back and forth there. Tyler's vocals border on a howl, giving the track an unhinged feel that's great. At the minute and 45-second mark, the song shifts to just vocals and percussion for a brief moment, and then returns with the rest of the instrumentation. And then about a minute later, there's a pretty big wild organ or it's like a synth. Either way, it's like I love the solo that's at work here, and it takes us into another moment of just vocals and percussion. And the structure on this one, I think it's pretty cool. It doesn't really seem like there's verses or choruses. It's more of just kind of like a stream of consciousness that plays on similar lyrical hooks throughout the song. Your second song is entitled Cuttin' Teeth. Got a little pedal steel that leads this one out with some mid-tempo rhythm and a touch of soulful organ. The track mellows into the verse with this jaunty classic country feel and with acoustic rhythm guitar taking the spotlight. It's interesting. The vocals work with the hushed, raspy aesthetic that honestly, like Tyler kind of reminds me of Justin Vernon on this one. And then you also get some soft pedal steel that works in the backdrop until the chorus where it becomes even more prominent. And then a big feature in the bridge. There's another cycle in this pattern, and then the third verse takes a big shift with the vocal element, and there's like a recitative lyrical element that comes into play here, and it's coming off kind of like muted. The production's interesting. It's like a muted megaphone that the vocals sound like. The chorus hits one more time, and then that pedal steel, is going to take us out of this one. Your third track is Onita. The title makes me immediately think of the film That Thing You Do. If you know, you know, but this is one that's been around for a bit, and it's a track that, you know, a fan favorite, but it feels a little out of place on this track list. And despite Rick working on it, it is nice to see it get some studio time. Acoustic rhythm opens with vocals that follow shortly after. This one embodies a contemporary folk feel as it unfolds in minimal fashion, with a bit of brass working with the first go on the chorus. And soft textures of pedal steel, accordion, and piano work beautifully together in formless fashion. And then at about the minute and 30-second mark, the drums and a bit of fiddle just help set this thing off. The build of this track is exquisite, and there's a reason I feel like he enjoys playing it live and has for almost a decade. And I love when the fiddle takes the lead about 30 seconds later on this one. The song continues to jam with the organ really coming to life, and then it settles into the final verse that really plays on minimalism pretty well, I'd say. The chorus goes big, and then the song drifts into a mellow instrumental coda, leading into your fourth track and one of my favorites, Getting to the Bottom. Guitars and rhythm all hit together out of the gate on a mid-tempo track that is predominantly country, but it definitely still works in a bit of that rock and roll vein. It's got a pretty solid honky tonk feel to it, I'd say. The lead electric guitar is definitely a highlight as it dances around Tyler's vocals, and there's additional harmonies and bits of pedal steel as at play here as well. The track keeps a steady pace and then moves into some playful solo territory at about the 3 minute mark and finishes with a vocal refrain that plays on the song's title. Your fifth track is entitled Bitin' List, kind of a silly one, opens with a big country style vocal and soft bass drum. The lyrics aim to be funny and snarky immediately, particularly with the line, if there ever come a time I get rabies, you're high on my biting list. I was curious what the title was all about, and then it didn't take long to find out on this one. You get a little guitar and vocal harmonies that build in before the drums roll, and then the rhythm hits on this thing. Jesse Wells works the banjo well on this thing. I would say it's a highlight, throwing down a solo at about the 1 minute mark, and then the instrumentation continues to build momentum as more elements work into the track. And then right after about the 2 minute mark, the song drifts into pretty interesting terrain. Everything kind of like slowly fades out as this formless, murky texture takes over the song, but you can still hear the banjo along with a bit of like mouth harp that comes in. And that formless texture is going to fade and just leaves the banjo to finish. Great musically here, but the lyrics just not quite my favorite from what I've heard from him. Your sixth track is entitled Nose on the Grindstone, opens with a real ominous acoustic guitar, and shortly after, Tyler's voice explodes into the song. It's a brilliant moment that opens a coal miner's tale that has been a big part of his storytelling since day one, and I love that we finally get this track on a record as well. There's a searing vulnerability in his voice as he plays the role of the miner's son, quoting the advice of his father in the opening verse. And then additional guitar works in momentarily in a chorus where the song's narrator calls out to his father in desperation. The song settles and droning organ works in seconds later, leading into an instrumental segment of this track. The organ is going to cede way to the vocals, and there's a great moment where the song goes quiet, and it's just right before the chorus returns to finish this thing off. Really a wonderful track and a great vocal performance on this one as well. Your seventh track is entitled Watch Out. Got drumsticks and vocals that count off a track that opens kind of this gentle frenzy. Lots of cymbal play, guitar, and feedback. It's the sounds of a live band as they walk on stage and prepare to open is kind of what he's getting at with this, I feel. There's some staccato crashes, and then the first verse opens minimally with vocals, a bit of hi-hat rhythm, and then some soft walking bass. The track finds its form in the chorus with the drums coming to life and electric guitar leading the way, providing some solo work over hushed, obscured vocals on this thing. Your eighth track is entitled Down Under. It's going to open with some feedback that fades in, and it's going to take the album into some up-tempo territory, kind of into the realm of indie rock on this one as well. It works with lighthearted, pop-driven melodies as it takes a somewhat silly foray into celebrating Australia with lines about koala bears with venereal diseases and pugilistic kangaroos. It's certainly rather interesting. The song hits a guitar solo time just after about the 2 minute mark, keeping the same tempo and feel as this transpires. The verse that follows is minimal, focusing on the vocals, percussion, and what I think it's tubular bells that are playing on this one to just make it even more awkward and kind of silly. The song works back into cruising altitude and works into a big coda with the refrain forever and a day as the lead guitar grinds out some solo work to finish on this thing. Your ninth track is entitled Poachers. This one kicks off with breezy acoustic rhythm and fluttering bass and some tom percussion. Really, honestly, the drumming, especially on this thing, reminds me of UK and Irish folk with like a touch of Neutral Milk Hotel. I really dig the music on this song, especially when the vocals hit. It has this indie and psychedelic folk feel. There's a slow build of instrumentation, starting with piano and guitar, and then followed by some accordion, organ, and mandolin. That accordion takes the lead around the minute and 45-second mark. And I just love the instrumentation that channels the sounds of woodwind instruments. I don't know if it's actual woodwinds or just synthesizers. Pretty sure it's just synths, but either way, it's very enjoyable. The track is going to shift focus back to the percussion to usher in some banjo, with the rest of the elements returning for a big finish that mellows for the last 20 seconds. And this is one that's kind of experimental, but I think the fans of his early stuff are going to dig what's going on here. Your title track is your 10th track, starts with laughing and other barroom hoots and hollers, and a drumstick count that leads to a driving crash of up-tempo guitars, vocals, and drums. There's a stellar accordion that works in the backdrop of this song that combines indie and I'd say a little bit of garage rock, along with some folk and a bit of zydeco as well. Think of that just kind of bayou sound. Electric guitar and organ share the solo spotlight for around the 2-minute and 30-second mark, leading into a segment that's just vocals and drums. It works a few bars and then rocks to finish, going into an instrumental coda with about 45 seconds left. Your 11th track is entitled Tirtha Yatra. I really like these next two tracks. This one opens with a psychedelic kind of Eastern style instrumentation and a soft hi-hat count, and abruptly shifts into a light, rollicking country too. It's an interesting combination of sounds here. Lyrics of wanting to go to India regale the listener with lots of slide complementing the track, as well as a bit of fiddle from time to time. The wordplay is probably the best of any songs. Like rhythmically, I really love what he's doing with the lyrics on this song. At the 2-minute and 20-second mark, the song moves into a fun solo where the fiddle seems to adopt a very Eastern style that blends so well. The organ takes over solo duties and leads us right back into "It Taught Me All About Dharma" hook and into the final verse. Spent some time in India, so it's great to see that experience, have some inspiration on that track. And your penultimate track, Tomcat and a Dandy, which opens with fiddle and this kind of like gospel Hare Krishna harmony that takes inspiration from the previous track. The vocals hit as this track continues to basically just work with like a repeat of that, this formless territory that sounds incredible, despite being pretty minimal and just derived from two elements. It's a very interesting experimental moment, but I dig it for the most part. And then Dirty Yacht Trill is your final song, takes us back into that rock and roll territory to close with some psychedelic organ play and some funky bass to get started. The first verse ups the tempo with driving bass and bass drum to match that manages to capture a bluegrass feel. So it's like a bluegrass and kind of like country hoedown vibe to it. A little after the 1-minute and 30-second mark, the music drops, featuring only a muted lo-fi vocal and harmonies, and you get a little more of that mouth harp that builds it back for a moment before a brief pause into a soulful bridge. The song shifts back into its country feel before working into a finish that finds its rock and roll legs once more, a little bit of that psychedelic kind of soulful territory. I think this is a record that is going to take some time to grow on people, including myself. There's a lot that I admire right off the bat. There's some stuff that I mentioned. I mean, the song Down Under, the song Bitin' List, given just the lyrical content of previous records and his storytelling ability and the strength that's there, these songs they seem a little bit too wild and just too goofy for me. I don't know where I'll stand with those down the road. I know that, the music on Down Under and Bitin' List is pretty cool. I will say that for him. And I'd say that there's a lot going on the record from a production standpoint that it just doesn't feel right for what this record is doing, even, despite being something new, despite being experimental. And it doesn't feel right for Tyler. I feel like there's so many times where the band just gets placed in the backdrop of this thing. And, the Food Stamps are an excellent outfit. They're a band that I feel that whatever you're doing from a production standpoint, just the mix of instrumentation and everything that's going on, it should be given more light. It should be given a little more clarity. I'm not saying that it needs to be like clean with a pop sheen, every instrument just shining bright and shining through. But I also feel like there's just too many songs where it's muddied and it's to the detriment of the experience overall. I hate to say it, but I'm going to give it a 6.7 right now out of 10. And this one's kind of stuck in vinyl purgatory for me. I can't decide whether I want to buy it or not. I'm not going to buy it immediately. I would say for those of you that are kind of on the fence like me, I'm going to keep giving this thing a go. I think that eventually it will grow on me. I wish I was in that camp of people that just immediately thought that this was one of the best albums of the year and that this is, is particularly the best country album of the year. I don't think it is. I still think that a record like Evangeline versus the Machine from Eric Church, it has better production. It has better continuity. It's got more cohesiveness as far as the runtime and just everything that's going on with it. But I will say that at the very least, this is an album that's worth your time. It's worth a go. And I'm excited to see what all of you think in the comments. Please like this video, share, subscribe to the channel. I hope you find this review helpful. And please stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.